The second thing we need to know is about stakeholders. And I would like to discuss different stakeholders, different roles, and I will start with the two most important parts of stakeholders for the culture, which I label the scholars and the amateurs. And then there's a third part of stakeholders, which I call novices and tourists. I will speak about them later, but let's start with scholars. Scholars is an indication for a person or an institute that is actively supporting and maintaining the knowledge of the artifacts and their use in the culture. A scholar is somebody who understands the culture, knows how to handle things, knows how the stories are intended, knows when to tell the stories, knows how the choreography of the dance should be understood. So this category includes restorers, curators, people who make copies, because sometimes the originals are so fragile that you work with copies, expert performers, players of musical instruments who are really experts, researchers of artifacts, and people who keep the documents, documentalists. All of them I consider scholars. And so this category could also include even dealers or collectors, as far as they aim actually at keeping the culture alive. Some collectors do, some dealers do, right? And if they do, they will sell you objects with an honest history and with honest documentation. And some museums and private collections are in this category, but not all. But there are museums that mainly focus on tourists, mainly focus on people who just want to have a nice day and look at funny or aesthetically pleasing things. And they might see a costume and say, this is a nice costume. And they have no idea where it comes from, when it was used, and so on, right? So some museums are actually part of the scholar group and some museums are not. And then we have the second type, which is amateurs. And I use the label amateurs for people who are a member of the audience that understands and that's willing to go to the performances, that's willing to play, to contribute, to support, and in a way to participate. An audience is the person who goes to a music performance and knows what the music is about and is happy about the music and will applaud and will in a way contribute, right? And it could be in different ways, but it could even be politically supporting, right? If enough people in a town think that this part of the local culture is important, they will make sure the culture gets supported. And so scholar and amateur are roles. And you will find out that in many cases people easily can change roles. So I give some examples here. An author of a novel, it's a scholar, he creates the novel, but he is also the reader of some other novels, right? And somebody could be making a flute, he is a scholar, and then he is listening to someone else playing the flute. He's an amateur, right? So these roles can easily change. But these are both, the scholars and the amateurs are instrumental in keeping the culture alive. Without both of them, the culture will die. So if we are doing to support the culture, we focus at least on the scholars and the amateurs. And then there's others. Tourists is a kind of audience that might be excited by aesthetics maybe, and think it's intriguing, it's strange. And then we have the other one, which is novices, that indicate an audience that might start from being a tourist but get interested and wants to develop to amateurs, so they want to learn. So they might be supported by amateurs and scholars to learn the values of the college, of the culture, to get the knowledge, to acquire the skills, and to, in the end, be part of the culture, right? So sometimes a museum is mainly attracting tourists, but if you have a chance, you could make them into novices in the culture, right? By teaching them, by giving them some extra information that fits their current knowledge. If you give somebody who is a real tourist a heavy book of information, it's a waste. But if you just give them a chance to try a little bit, that might work. So, different stakeholders have different needs and aim at different experiences. If we are going to design a website or something like that to support the culture, scholars need things. So a restorer needs to be able to actually touch the objects. If I'm restoring a costume, I should take the costume, I should maybe take out some threads that are worn and put in new threads and so on. Remove additions and remove things that are not repairable. And then there's copyist, who needs to be inspect and measure in very much details, which by the way could be dangerous, as some of you know quite well, right? And then archivists need access to all the records, even the records that we consider private. Even the records that tell me how much I paid for a repair, privately, right? But an archivist needs to know that one. And then you have teachers they need access to originals or copies in order to teach. And then a performer, again, needs access to at least copies and maybe sometimes originals in a controlled way. So, amateurs may be of different types. An amateur member of the audience needs to know about the access. Is this an original instrument or is this a copy? Is this costume a copy or is this the original costume, right? So, give them the information. And then tourists sometimes just needs to be excited. So I know a museum in Germany about musical instruments, and in one room there is the largest violin ever made. It's a 4-meter high violin. Right? And some people say, wow, and they want a selfie in front of the big violin. Fine. They play the fee, they allow the museum to be supported, and some, they just want to see the violin that Obama played on or something like that. A violin that was used by a famous person. Maybe it's a lousy violin, but so